Good morning. My name is Jackie McVicker, and I'm sorry that I can't be with you this morning. I'm traveling in another direction, but I wish you all a great conference. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk to you this morning about the Indigenous Maya Women's Group, Kaqla, which I had the opportunity to study and work with in 2010 and 2011. And prior to that as well. I'll get in a little bit more to that in a moment, and I just wanted to start with giving a bit of a contextual framework for which Kaqla was founded in 1996 at the time of the signing of the Guatemala Peace Accords. In Guatemala, there was an internal armed conflict which lasted 36 years, officially ending in 1996, which saw the massacre of more than 200,000 people, primarily indigenous Maya people, though all sectors of the population were affected. During the recent genocide trial in Guatemala against de facto military president from 1982 to 1983, Efraín Ríos Montt, we saw that people were systematically massacred. They had their homes burnt down, their crops burnt, so that hunger was also a way that people were targeted. In particular, we saw how women were used as instruments of war by the military during the conflict, especially in the early 1980s. Women were tortured, were raped, were kept as sexual slaves. They were seen as the people that could transcend. The women are often responsible, obviously, in many cultures, for passing on the culture, the traditions, and the military saw that by executing women, humiliating women, that their role in this Guatemalan society changed. They also were killed while they were pregnant because they were seen to be carrying the seeds of future generations. So given this context and the signing of the Peace Accords in 1996, which brought for many, I think, hope that there would be change in Guatemala, that indigenous people would finally begin to have the right to participate more fully in society that is has historically been a society propped up on racist and patriarchal systems that have kept a very small elite in control of the economy and the politics of Guatemala. In 1996, as the peace accords were being signed, which was a long process, some women in particular, began to meet and talk about the changing role of especially indigenous women, how racism had impacted them over time, and how they saw their role in the future. From this group that began to meet, formed Kaqla. And Kaqla is primarily indigenous women who have had the opportunity to have an educational formation. And they decided that they would start meeting and come together to talk about, as I said, where they're going, what their challenges have been to date. When they decided that they would officially form an organization, they figured that they would be focused on political formation, training women, empowerment of women. What they began to see, however, is that when they started to talk about their experiences of war, of conflict, whether it be the internal armed conflict or family violence that many women suffer, they began to notice that it wasn't enough to just talk about it. And in the interviews that I did with the 4 women in particular, they said it wasn't enough to just talk about it anymore. We had to go deeper. When we started to talk about why racism was hurtful for us, it wasn't enough to just talk about it. We had to begin a healing process. And they began a integral healing process. They would do body work. They would incorporate spirituality into their training. And this has really been the heart of the work of Kaqla and why they see their work as transformational. They put a special emphasis on personal transformation, given that they work really hard as an organization as a whole to deconstruct the impacts of internal oppression, in particular, internal oppression and how that has affected Indigenous women. And they use healing or techniques, which at the beginning they often looked outward. The women said that they often looked outward to see, what sort of expertise was out there. They tried things like Reiki and yoga, and they tried to incorporate those. And little by little, they began to actually revalue their own traditions, healing traditions that are part of their Mayan cosmology. And in fact, the women that participate in Kaqla now, in particular, Abelina, who Barang's going to be talking more about, she talked in her interview especially about how reconnecting to her Mayan cosmology and who she is as a young Indigenous woman has helped her feel closer to her family, she feels more confident in who she is as a woman and as an Indigenous woman. She's a really remarkable young woman who uses a feminist and Indigenous lens, a lens as a lesbian woman. These are all the things that are part of who she is and things that are important for her. And she found and still finds that the space that Kaqla provides, not only for the political formation, but the space for healing, she called it an oasis. And she felt that, and she said, it gives me everything, this space. Kaqla is a space of young women to older women. Abelina, originally, when I met her, she was a woman who was wearing the traditional clothes which many Indigenous women in Guatemala wear. And I was surprised that when I met her, she told me that she had a no-waist because during the conflict and because of the racism that so many Indigenous people in Guatemala face, she had actually stopped wearing her traditional clothing and opted for more Western clothes. And she said she had stopped wearing it because she just couldn't do it. She had such low self-esteem and who she was as a person. She couldn't get up and put on these clothes that they had meaning for her, but she felt that she couldn't wear them. But through the process of working and being part of the healing circles that Kaqla does, she said, I wear the clothes that I've been given, the top that I've been woven, the traditional skirt. She didn't say I wear it with pride, but she said I wear them only now that I feel like my whole body can now accept and really live who I am when I'm in those clothes. Maybe just to conclude, because Barang will be speaking more about this, I think that there are many scholars adult education scholars who talk about transformation, emancipatory learning, and liberation, like Mesereau, Brookfield, Lang, and many others. I also, in my research, looked at particular at Indigenous authors in the North, women authors, academics who write about the idea of nationhood. I think the really important piece for Kaqla is the personal, is the connection to a larger group, but it's also, they talk more about being Indigenous than feminist or women, insofar as that they believe that a whole society and whole, in Guatemala there's still a very high, around 65 or 70% of the population is Indigenous, but they continue to be oppressed for many reasons, and Kaqla believes that the liberation or the emancipation of the Indigenous people of Guatemala, is their ultimate goal. So deconstructing the oppression that exists, and creating new ways to see the world, new ways to live in the world, new ways to create spaces not only for women but for all people who are seeking a different way to live. So I think I'll end it there, and I just, again, thank you very much for inviting me in this way. Thank you.